Вы умеете прощать?
Да. Но не все.
А что невозможно простить?
Предательство.
Putin just admitted to war crimes in front of the whole world. This coup and its aftermath could lead to the end of Putin and his regime. This coup has also led to the end of my love for YouTube, since they demonetized my channel. But I'll talk about that at the end of the video. Lukashenko also gave a public speech today for the first time since the coup attempt. And trust me when I say this, Putin picked the wrong guy to do his negotiations. As I will get into this really soon, during the whole speech, Lukashenko described how Putin was about to make a grave mistake starting a war with Wagner and how he stepped in and saved the day. It's quite funny, in a sense, so to start off this video by giving you guys all a laugh, first let's listen to some of Lukashenko's speeches. Then we will get into how Putin accidentally admitted to war crimes. But before that, real quick, I always believe that YouTube is not happy with me covering this war, and yesterday, they just proved that. They just striked and demonetized my second channel over a video covering Prigozhin's latest audio speech. So, if you guys can please hit the like button below, the algorithm isn't happy with my videos, and your likes are the only thing that tells the algorithm that this video is worth watching. Alright, now let's listen to Lukashenko.
Пятница, вы знаете, у нас такой день был счастливый. Мы все готовились отпраздновать День выпускников. Естественно, и я был занят прилично этими вопросами. Да и как-то, откровенно скажу, получая редкую информацию о том, что происходит в России, в Ростове, на юге, я как-то и внимания особо не обращал. Ну, война идет, мало ли что там происходит. К утру, в субботу, с 8 часов утра мне уже поступает тревожная информация о ситуации в России. Через ФСБ и наш Комитет госбезопасности мне докладывают, президент Путин хочет связаться, пожалуйста. Договорились в 9:30, что мы переговорим в любое удобное для него время. Когда в 10 он выступил, в 10:10 позвонил и подробнейшим образом проинформировал меня о ситуации, которая происходит в России. Задал несколько вопросов, в том числе и про противодействие этому, и понял, что ситуация сложная. Самое опасное, как я понял, это не в том, что какая она была ситуация, а как она могла развиваться и ее последствия. Это было самое опасное. Я также понял, принято жестокое решение, оно и прозвучало под текстом выступления Путина – мочить. Я предложил Путину не торопиться. Давай, говорю, поговорим с Пригожиным, с командирами его. На что он мне сказал: слушай, Саша, бесполезно. Он даже трубку не берет, ни с кем разговаривать не хочет. Я спрашиваю, где он? В Ростове. Я говорю, хорошо. Худой мир лучше любой войны. Не торопись. Я попробую с ним связаться. Он в очередной раз сказал, что это бесполезно. Я говорю, хорошо, подожди. Где-то мы разговаривали, наверное, с полчаса. Потом он меня проинформировал, что на фронте. Помню его слова. Ты знаешь, а на фронте, как ни странно, лучше, чем когда-либо было. Я говорю, ну вот видишь, не все так печально. В 11 часов надо же было эти телефоны найти. Говорю, как с ним связаться? Дай телефон. Он говорит, скорее всего, ФСБ есть телефон. Мы уточнили, установили к середине дня целых 3 канала, по которым мы можем разговаривать с Ростовом.
In a second, we'll listen to him explain his talks with Prigozhin, but first, I just want to dig deeper into what he just said. Putin said that there's no point in contacting Prigozhin because he's not picking up calls. But based on the reports, it seems like Prigozhin tried contacting Putin multiple times before starting his march. Those attempts were blocked, and I'm guessing they were blocked by Shoigu or his allies. This seems like a really big deal. Putin's staff is making decisions about what Putin needs to know and what he doesn't. Those decisions by his staff are what led to Prigozhin's assault. This kind of seems like Putin is losing control of his own people, and they are acting like a rogue entity. I guess we'll just have to wait and see how this affects Putin's rule and his war in Ukraine. All right, let's listen to the next part.
В 11:00 Путин меня предупреждал, не возьмет трубку, он мгновенно снял трубку. Вот президент Беларуси звонит, будешь ли разговаривать с Александром Ильичем? Буду, но я слышу их разговор. Взял трубку, разговор, эйфория. У Евгения полная эйфория. Разговаривали первый раунд минут 30 на матерном языке. Исключительно. Слов матерных я потом уже проанализировал, было в 10 раз больше, чем нормальная лексика. Ну, он, конечно, извинился и начал мне, я говорю, матерными словами рассказывать. А я думаю, с чего зайти к нему, чтобы начать эти переговоры, так сказать. Ребята только с фронта. Они видели тысячи своих погибших ребят. Ребята очень обиженные, особенно командиры. И, как я понял, они очень влияли, это предварительно вычислил, на самого Пригожина. Да, он такой, знаете, героический парень, но на него оказывали давление и влияние очень те, кто руководили штурмовыми отрядами и видели эти смерти. И вот в этой ситуации, выскочив оттуда в Ростов, в таком полубешеном состоянии, я с ним веду этот диалог. Я начал уточнять. Я говорю, ты что, убил кого-то там из гражданских, военных, которые тебе не противостояли? Александр Григорьевич, я вам клянусь, мы никого не тронули. Мы заняли штаб. Вот я тут нахожусь там и так далее, и так далее. И это оказалось правдой. Это было очень важно, заметьте, это было очень важно, что они, зайдя в Ростов, никого не тронули.
It's interesting that Lukashenko says that Prigozhin was influenced by his commanders, Wagner unit leaders who were on the front line and had seen their fellow soldiers die. So it makes sense that their actions were filled with rage. But stories start to contradict themselves when you compare them to what Putin said yesterday. In yesterday's address, Putin called Wagner soldiers brave patriots who were fooled by Prigozhin in his attempted coup. So, according to Putin, Prigozhin was controlling the soldiers. And according to Lukashenko, Prigozhin was being controlled. Quite the opposite. Anyways, Lukashenko's speech was long and he kept going on and on about his role. I don't want to bore you guys with the whole thing, so I'll quickly go over the last important bit. I said, don't make a hero out of me in any case. Neither of me, nor of Putin, nor of Prigozhin, because we missed the situation. And then we thought that it would dissolve. But it did not dissolve. And two people who fought on the front collided. There are no heroes in this case. If Russia collapses, we will all be left under the rubble. We will all die. This quote kind of proves the true motivation behind why Lukashenko intervened in the coup and negotiated a compromise. He didn't want to lose his power in Belarus. As I've covered in previous videos, Lukashenko is the longest ruling dictator in Europe. Back in 2020, when Lukashenko won the Belarusian presidential election by a landslide, all the while being highly unpopular amongst the Belarusian citizens, massive protests broke out all across Belarus, and it seemed like this might be the end of Lukashenko's rule. That's when Lukashenko asked his close friend Putin for help. And Putin sent the Russian army to calm down the situation in Belarus. Ever since then, Lukashenko has kept his rule in Belarus and has done more than enough to return the favor to Putin. The Russian army has been able to use Belarus to attack Ukraine from another front. And there's also news of Russian nuclear weapons being stationed in Belarus. Now, Lukashenko can't have his buddy Putin lose power in Russia, because if Putin loses power, Lukashenko knows that he'll be next. So, he was at the forefront of the negotiations when Prigozhin launched his coup against the Kremlin. On top of this, Lukashenko received a hefty reward for helping Putin. Under Putin's decision, Belarus will pay a very low price for Russian gas until 2031. Hopefully that makes sense behind why he's so interested in Putin holding on to power. Soon after Lukashenko's speech, Putin gave a public speech of his own. So now let's go over what he said. Listen for yourself, Putin admitting to war crimes.
Между тем хочу отметить, и хочу, чтобы тоже мы все знали об этом, содержание всей группы «Вагнер» полностью обеспечилось государством. Из Министерства обороны, из государственного бюджета мы полностью финансировали эту группу. Вот только с мая 22 года по май 23 на денежное содержание и стимулирующие выплаты государство заплатило компании «Вагнер» 86 миллиардов 262 миллиона рублей. Из них денежное содержание 70 миллиардов 384, стимулирующие выплаты 15 миллиардов 877, страховые выплаты 110 миллиардов 179 миллионов. При этом собственник компании «Конкорд» через военторг при всем том, что само содержание Вагнера было на плечах государства, за год собственник компании «Конкорд» через военторг заработал от государства, поставляя продукты питания и оказывая услуги по питанию в армии, заработал 80 миллиардов рублей. Содержание полностью взяло на себя государство, а часть вот этой всей группы, это компания «Конкорд», в это же самое время заработали 80 миллиардов рублей. Но надеюсь, что вот в ходе этих работ никто ничего не украл, или, скажем так, украл поменьше. Но, безусловно, мы будем, конечно, с этим совсем разбираться.
As you just heard, Putin admits to paying the Wagner Group $1 billion for its help in the war. Now, doesn't that imply that the Wagner Group was representing the Russian government in the war? Does that in turn make the Russian government responsible for all the war crimes Wagner Group had committed? Now, we all know that the Wagner Group was working for the Russian government, but officially, Russia never admitted this before. So they could have claimed plausible deniability. They can just say that the Wagner Group was an independent entity, and they didn't represent Russia officially. So hopefully this accidental admission by Putin has some consequences for Russia for the war crimes that Wagner had committed. I highly doubt that'll be the case, but hey, a man can hope, right? By the way, did you guys catch at the end how Putin tried to sneak in, "I hope they stole less"? Might be that could be a hint of future corruption charges against Prigozhin in case he tries to act up again. The Kremlin gave him immunity for the treason he committed, but that doesn't stop them from bringing fake corruption charges. One thing I've noticed about authoritarian governments is that everyone is corrupt, but you are only charged with corruption once you betray the people in power. Xi Jinping has used the same strategy in China to silence his opposition, and Putin is probably doing the same thing here. Talking about charges against Prigozhin, the FSB announced it has dropped its investigation into Wagner's armed uprising because its participants seized the activities directly aimed at committing the crime. After that, Russia's Ministry of Defense announced Wagner is preparing to hand over its heavy weaponry to the army. This is definitely great news for Ukraine. One of the most combat-ready and brutal military units in Russia has been eliminated. To all the people saying that Russia is just repositioning Wagner to Belarus so they can attack Kyiv, this kind of kills your point. How is Wagner supposed to attack from Belarus if they are leaving all their weaponry in Russia? And before you go down and comment that the whole announcement could be a lie and that Wagner is going to take the weapons to Belarus, let me remind you again that we will be able to see all of this from satellites. There's no point in lying from Russia's side. Based on these two announcements, it seems like both sides are holding up their end of the deal. Lukashenko confirmed that Prigozhin is now in Belarus, and FSB has dropped the treason charges. But it looks like Putin doesn't want to fulfill all points of the deal. Remember I mentioned in earlier videos that, according to Prigozhin's announcement, part of the deal was that Shoigu resigns from the Ministry of Defense. That doesn't seem to be happening, at least not yet. Yesterday we saw Shoigu sitting at a cabinet meeting with Putin, and today we saw Shoigu waiting with the military while Putin gave his speech. It could be that Putin will slowly remove Shoigu from an official position to not seem weak in front of the Russian people. He doesn't want to give off a message that he can be strong-armed into other people's wills. I guess we'll have to wait and see if Shoigu stays or goes. And adding on to the story, Lukashenko said that Wagner can stay in Belarus, but they will no longer be funded by Russia or the Belarus governments. So either they keep funding themselves, or a more likely scenario is that Wagner will leave for Africa and the Middle East, where they will have a highly profitable business of starting civil wars and taking control of third world countries' resources. And last but not least, I want to share the story of YouTube demonetizing my second channel. As I mentioned in yesterday's video, I decided to upload some of my coverage to my second channel where I have help from my other team members. Yesterday, I decided to upload a video about Prigozhin's audio speech that he published to his Telegram. This video was just unlisted on my channel, meaning I hadn't even published it yet, and out of nowhere I received a community strike, which doesn't really make any sense. There are hundreds of news organizations who have covered the same story, but an independent YouTuber like me tries to do the same, and YouTube strikes me. Then, minutes after the strike, I received an email saying that my whole channel was demonetized, and it will stay demonetized for 3 months as, I guess, some sort of punishment. Which is just crazy. I'm hoping this is all just a big mistake, and that's why I made a thread on Twitter to get YouTube's attention so they can fix it quickly. So if you guys can take a second and go retweet that post so it can get more awareness, that would help me out a lot. In the meantime, I've decided to continue posting on the second channel as usual, like nothing has changed. And I've decided to launch some merch to help fund the channel. Here's the design in front of you guys. If you like the merch and you want to support my coverage, you can buy it by using the link in the description. Your purchase will help fund the second channel until YouTube fixes their mistake. Thank you guys so much for your support.